Gentlemen, you're recognized. If you could state your name for the record and then share with this committee whatever you'd like. Thank you for being here.
Go ahead, just go first, and I'll start off with that.
Hey, good morning. My name is Todd Jones. I'm stepping in for Justin Hawkins. Justin, our CEO, was called to another state. I'm the chairman of the company and also one of the co-founders. And thank you so much for taking this time. We sure do appreciate it.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate you taking time with us today. Greetings from the great state of Georgia. I want to say this, after listening to all of you, we are dealing with the exact same thing. We're dealing with how do you handle pretrial, how do you handle working with your bonding agents, how do you handle technology and monitoring, how do we handle drug courts, what are we doing and how are we addressing this both legislatively at the state, local jurisdictions in our local communities. So it was almost like we were sitting in some of Georgia committees when I heard some of the representatives addressing some of the issues. What we've done at Talitrix is address that very problem with a very unique solution. And our solution addresses these common issues: reducing recidivism, addressing mental health and addiction services, removing the societal stigma and increasing employment opportunities, protecting the victim with a geofencing app, which will give the victim alerts from 10 up to 500 miles out where an offender may be, and all with real-time monitoring and data analytics with exact location tracking to include exclusion zones while also decreasing the cost to state, local jurisdictions, and end users. The unique aspect of this, or the unique thing that we've been able to pull together at Talitrix, is that we're not only doing this with bonding agents, we're working with local judges, our sheriffs, our victims advocates, local police departments. We're also working with our public defenders and our DAs, and we have found a solution. We are first to the market. We are on the ground across 3 states and across 50 counties already with our wristbands being deployed on offenders, working closely with all of the agencies, departments, and offices that I've just mentioned. We appreciate your time. We would look forward to working with Tennessee. We would look forward to working with the Tennessee legislature and addressing these problems that we're facing in all of the other states across the Southeast, but yet doing it with a solution-oriented Talitrix band and bracelet. I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Good morning, everyone. We sure do appreciate this. A very quick aside. We'll go through the deck, but it won't be a PowerPoint vomit. It'll be 9 slides, but hopefully they'll give you kind of a picture's worth 1,000 words. First, understand when we sat back, the name itself has a lot of meaning to us. I know that the gentleman in front of me, I believe he said his father was a Latin professor. Well, I did not know that Talitrix was ankle monitor in Latin. So we took the beginning of Talus and the end of a monitrix and created Talitrix, because our goal was to effectively, in a sense, Uber the ankle monitor business. We went into this and we spoke to a variety of different stakeholders. And after speaking with the stakeholders, we've literally heard so many of the same words. We needed to take the garage door opener off the ankle because of the stigma. We needed to make charging more efficient. So many of the ankle monitors were requiring up to 2 times a day charging up to 45 minutes. If you're working a construction site, if you're working as a waiter, imagine telling your boss, excuse me, I'll be back in 45 minutes. That's just not possible in those types of jobs. The third thing, and Micah, my colleague, just mentioned it, was the victims. We know that domestic violence is a precursor to gun violence. We wanted to do everything we could to protect the victims. So not only did we create a victim app that goes right onto their mobile phone, and as you all know, that's primarily women, but that's free. We do not want to, nor will we charge for something like that. We feel as if it's the right thing to do from a public policy point of view. Micah spoke a little bit about it, and you guys have been speaking about it this morning. Right inside of the app, we talk about so many things like mental health, drugs, et cetera, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, so many times, may it be if we were talking to the DAs, the PDs, we were talking to the DJJ, the DOC, Department of Parole and Pardons, it doesn't matter which acronym soup you want to use, we consistently heard we want to understand more. Well, as we started to do a deep dive over the last 3 decades of where the industry has gone, one of the things we realized was there was not enough business analytics. Now, for those of you kind of in business today, you hear all the time predictive analytics, business analytics dashboards, you name it. They're fancy words, but what we wanted to be able to do was use this terabyte load of data to be able to provide information, and that information was going to hopefully either predict good behavior or bad behavior. Now, I want to stress, we're just looking at behavior. We're not profiling anything else, and that's key. But we want to make sure if someone is doing the right thing, then we want to do everything we can through our AI and through our ML and ML's machine learning to be able to encourage that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. At the same time, if they're doing, quote, the wrong thing, and I'll put that in quotes because I know there's a definition that each of you have on what's the wrong thing, we want to make sure that we help that person turn the corner. Ultimately, I get asked all the time by our investor groups, I get asked all the time by, different stakeholders, Todd, what's the exit for you guys? And believe it or not, the exit for us isn't so much a financial metric, but rather, did we reduce the lagging indicator that so many of you are thinking about, and that's recidivism. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Could I have them? Thank you. We decided, oh, my apologies. If I was a button, and if I was working, and if I wasn't working.
Is there a way to change it?
Okay, hypothetically, I can do, all right, we'll get that. Let me just go ahead and tell you what you would have seen, and maybe we'll get to there. First and foremost, we wanted to provide each jurisdiction with their own and their flexible way of being able to do this. So ultimately, and sorry, this is not a gun case, though it looks like one.
And we're going to try and get you some help with the PowerPoint.
Okay, great. But I wish I could pass it around, but a little inefficient. But ultimately, what we have here is we have a smartwatch, has literally time on it, biometrics on it, you name it. It provides for an ability to have anything that you have on your Apple Watch, or maybe you have an Android watch, etc. The unique thing here, oh great. The unique thing here is the fact that we have the ability to have what effectively is a two-system component. We have 3 different products that we're able to provide to each of our jurisdictions. And I'll go ahead and go from, I'll say, the highest amount of redundancy all the way down to the lowest around case management. Oh, thank you. Our Guardian system, if you could see over here, is effectively taking both of these into account. If you can imagine redundancy across each one of these tools, so you have GPS, GSM, CDMA, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. Here, you have the exact same thing here. So we have at any time, we have the ability to determine, based on 2 different devices, are they effectively in the exact same location? We do give a 30-feet buffer because we understand that people need to live. They need to take a shower, and they need to go to the kitchen, they got to cook, etc. So we didn't make it 10 feet, we made it 30 feet. But this gives them the ability to be able to do that. On the case management side, we know that we want to be able to help the offender get back into society, and we don't want them to rescind. So we do everything we can from a notification standpoint on the phone. The notification standpoint allows them to be reminded of the meetings they have with their probation officer, the court dates that they have, etc. Their probation officer or whoever else is supervising them is able to put calendar entries on here. There's chat on here. There's also the ability to do photo check-in. So even though I can at any time log into the web, or the supervisor has his or her own phone, they can find out where I'm at, but they can also basically have on there a photo check-in. So if it says, and my apologies, the Titan Stadium, I think of Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, my apologies for not knowing the name of the Titan Stadium, but if it says both devices tell you they're at Titan Stadium watching the game on Sunday, you can literally say, let me see a photo check-in and see that. Additionally, we've gone ahead and we've added video. That was added during the pandemic because so many times courts were closed, they wanted to be able to do certain court proceedings. Now, I don't want to tell Tennessee how to handle that, but I want to make sure that you understand there is flexibility to be able to handle maybe first appearances, certain administrative hearings and things like that. Clearly, an entire trial won't be done by video. We understand that. But there is an opportunity to provide each one of the offenders the opportunity to not have to leave work, lose money, not have to deal with childcare, and then still be able to appear in front of the magistrate or in front of the judge and still be able to do that. In addition, right inside the app, they have the ability to get mental health assistance, narcotics, suicide prevention, and also alcohol. We provide that as part of our services because we feel as if we got to help these individuals stay straight and we got to help them stay out of jail. Last but not least, we do provide both devices in the Guardian system. A lot of people ask that. The reason why is we know a lot of people can't afford a phone. But we know to get back into society nowadays, you don't even know your work schedule without your phone. Your boss wants to contact you, you need a phone. And so we provide not just a phone, we provide unlimited minutes, unlimited texts, unlimited data. Now, I know many of you are thinking, but what happens as a child offender, a pedophile? I don't want them going out to pornography. We understand that. So there is complete remote device management. So we are able to, with every offender, we remotely control that device. So if the judicial order even changes right now, we could, in a matter of 15 minutes, change what's on that device. In addition to the Talitrix app on the device, we make sure that there's job apps on there, DOL apps on there, DSS apps on there, etc. So the individual literally has, I'm going to call it help in a toolbox, and it's literally all sitting onto their phone, thank you, and then onto their bracelet. Now, the thing that you may be asking is, well, can they take this off? Doesn't it need to charge? Well, actually, no. That's the battery. You put it right on top. So you literally are, if you're working construction, if you're waiting a table, or if you're just sleeping, and that's what I would suggest that when they do it, just do it when they sleep. The battery will go for at least 3 days. So what I would still suggest from an SOP standpoint to go ahead and charge it on an every evening basis. But at the end of the day, the stigma is taken away. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead real quick and change gears on you because I felt as if it'd be important. If you guys are trying to take a look at what technology exists and what technology is out there in terms of what you've seen in the last 3 decades, in terms of, I'll just say, you know, the taxi cab versus the Uber, we've gone ahead and we did sign our first big contract with the Inside the Wires. We were hearing from the same sheriffs that were doing, as we call it, outside the wires, we were hearing inside of the jails, they were having an issue with labor. They were having an issue with hiring. They were having an issue with retention. They were also having an issue with making sure that they could prove that judicial orders were being followed. For instance, that the inmate was getting 1 hour of exercise. The inmate was getting the opportunity to go to the clinic. The inmate was getting the opportunity to go eat, you name it. And so we've gone ahead and we have put Talitrix inside the wires now. So if you can imagine, inside the wires, it's going to be something where the bracelet will actually go for at least 30 days. They'd be changed over only once a month. The bracelet would basically be hitting Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and that will allow us to be able to provide to the control center of any jail on a big 90-inch LCD. If you'd ever seen Flight Tracker before, when you look at where your flights are at, you see all the airplanes in the United States, we call it Band Tracker. So you would see, as you see up here, literally you'd see where if people are in the pods, if people are in the yards, or people are at the gym, you name it. But imagine being able to know exactly where everybody's at. Second, biometrics. The biometrics that we have for outside the walls also happens inside the walls. So when you think about drugs, if you take meth, I can guarantee you, you'll go from about 70 of your heart rate to about 160. It's an immediate indicator that you have taken something that sped you up. On the other hand, suicide watch. If suddenly your heart rate drops from 80 down to 40, we know that we need to move someone immediately. Fourth, we need to make sure that certain inmates stay away from each other because they have a history, I'll just say, of having an issue. So we're able to do that with the system and alert every guard and alert the control center if Micah and Todd, or Todd and Micah, are getting within 100 feet of each other or 50 feet of each other, whatever the rule was that was established by the warden or by the jail captain. So our feeling is that that's going to be able to change the game inside of jails and then eventually inside of prisons because we feel as if given this type of technology will help all the issues that are right now facing the jails and prisons from a labor perspective, being able to prove that we're giving them the extras they need, making sure that they have all the information that they have about that individual on a biometric basis. I'm going to stop right there. We're trying to kind of squeeze a lot in just because of the airport schedule and see if there's any questions.
I understand. Could you touch on cost? I have had that question posed.
Sure. I should have mentioned that right up front. We had heard through our stakeholder analysis, we had heard upfront costs that sometimes topped as much as $400 up front. We had heard daily fees that range from 8 to 15, 7 to 15 US dollars a day. In my mind, an individual coming out, I'd like to think they're all going to be making 6 figures, but that's probably not the case. So if it's a self-pay situation, I didn't want them to be in the position where they were literally paying 1 hour of their labor to make sure that they could be on this, or if it was the state paying or the jurisdiction paying, we wanted to make sure that it was something that could easily be, I'll say, moved in. So depending on which system, our first product is both, our second product is just the band, and our third product is the phone. If, depending on that, so Mr. Chairman, there is a range, but the upfront is going to range from $69 to $199. That's going to include 30 days of monitoring. So you can do the math there. And the monitoring, depending on the services that are chosen, because we can do the active monitoring for you. We can do a variety of different services for you. It's going to range from $1.99 to $2.99 a day. It was important to me from a mission standpoint, frankly, if we're going to truly try to find a way to help these men and women come back into society and integrate the way that we can, I think it's incumbent upon us to provide the services, and it's also incumbent upon us to provide the support. One of the things I will mention is we have put in a professional level contact center. So not just the supervisors, but the offenders are able to contact us literally phone, internal app, text, IM. This way, the offenders, no matter what modality they want to use, they can get a hold of us, and we promise a live person within 60 seconds. This, to me, if we're going to help and get them back onto the straight and narrow, we want to be able to say, we've given you every tool in the toolbox to be successful. If you still decide to rescind, then frankly, I think it's on you at that point. But we've given you everything we could to make sure that you could stay out.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
if I
you're
may.
recognized.
I'd be remiss if I didn't address a particular point that one of the representatives on your panel mentioned, because it happened in my home district. Several years ago, we had an individual on an ankle monitor who was being monitored. There was a lag time in the monitoring. He went into his ex-wife's place of employment, shot and killed her, and then fled to Atlanta, all of which the law enforcement found out after the fact because there was a delay. So the gentleman, I think, that mentioned that earlier, on our system, that individual, had there been, and he did cut it off after the event happened. The moment that the tamper would have happened with this, our system, the sheriff would have been alerted, the victim would have been alerted, and then our supervisor and/or probation would have been alerted. At the moment of alert, we would have had moment-by-moment real-time tracking every 15 to 20 seconds of where the individual was going. From a victim standpoint, the victim, in this case, the individual that he went to another jurisdiction to commit the homicide, would have been alerted. If we set that perimeter at 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, that victim would have been alerted, like I said earlier, up to 500 miles. So that would have been a free app that they could have put on their phone, that an alert would have come through that said, this individual is within 10 to 20 miles of you. This individual is within 5 miles of you. And that would have saved that individual's life had they had that app and been able to take evasive action or contact a law enforcement immediately who would have already been tracking the individual in real time.
If I could add something, Mr. Chairman, to that very quickly. One, on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction level, the jurisdiction can decide what the escalation is. So, for instance, if they want phone call escalation, if they want email escalation, text escalation, that's their decision. Also, exclusion zones can be set up on an offender by offender. So, for instance, we have a child pedophile. We're able to basically make it where they cannot go with a park, a school, you name it. On the other hand, the judge puts an order in that you can't go to a package store or a bar because you're having alcohol problems. We can make it where the exclusion zones tells us that. Anytime the exclusion zones are breached, we get within 30 seconds that notification. So we're able to hopefully, I'll say, change the behavior of that individual and get them out of those exclusion zones. At the same time, there's home zones where the judicial order could say you must be there between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., and you would know if the individual was not at home. And last but not least, a lot of the past technology required, I'll say, large home-based units to be placed into the home. They look like bricks. We use a combination of GPS, GSM, CDMA, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. So we do not need any additional hardware placed into the individual's home.
Thank you, gentlemen. I do have a couple folks on my list. I know you all need to go, but I'll just try to get through this quickly. First on my list is Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, if there's a domestic with a no contact, and say the female spouse is in Walmart, and the individual who's under supervision is trying to go to Walmart at the same time, may not know that they're there, the victim would get notice. Does the person who's trying to go to Walmart, the defendant who's being supervised, do they also get an alert on his app or phone or so forth? And then if you could also briefly discuss your incorporation of jobs, availability of jobs in the community or district, and making the defender aware of those and the court aware of those jobs so that the court knows, hey, you could have gone and looked at X, Y, and Z. I know for a fact that. If you could address that, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sure. Mr. Jones
I'll
or
take the first one.
Yep.
Yes, in that situation, and we've had those situations where you've got a spouse or a former spouse who is at a shopping mall. And let's say the offender is either driving by. Sometimes we've had them just driving by, and they'll get an alert. So the offender gets an immediate alert that you've breached a no-go zone. The victim will also get an alert. Now, what usually happens in that situation with the ban, we can do a photo check-in. So probation or our supervisors can say, hey, whoa, we know that you're in an area you're not supposed to be. Can you do a photo check-in or a video check-in so that we can get live video on the watch? And the individual may say, hey, I'm driving to the supermarket on the other side of town. I had to go by this situation. The problem comes when they don't answer the photo check-in, when they do not answer the video check-in, then we have reason for calls at that point, and the victim would be notified immediately that the individual is even in the vicinity. If the individual is unaware that the ex-spouse or the current spouse is at that particular Walmart in this particular instance, they can pull into the parking lot. Probation or a supervisor can give a phone call and ask, did you know you're in a situation? Oh, I was completely unaware. I can leave immediately. And then that individual can reroute and come back at a later time. From an employment standpoint, we've both worked on criminal justice reform in Georgia for the last 10 years. We found ourselves in a very successful predicament. We were so successful with criminal justice reform, our drug courts, our behavioral courts, that we had a lot of folks taking advantage of a second chance, but we had employers that didn't want to hire them because either an ankle monitor or, I can't have these individuals in front of employees on a showroom floor. I've got other employees because, let's face it, when you see an ankle monitor, it's the size of a small brick on your ankle, it doesn't matter what you've done, what the offense is, the price you've paid. Individuals in society, including myself, immediately are going to say, this person's a criminal, or I have reason to be concerned. What has this individual done? With the watch, we've actually had legislation in Georgia that's incentivized employers from skilled craft and trade to technology to hospitality industry, because the individual can come in and it looks just like a watch. They can integrate within society, take advantage of that second chance, and there's no reason to leave the showroom floor, to leave the place of employment, to go sit for an hour and charge the ankle monitor. They can have the charging device right on it and continue to work with their responsibilities in their job description.
So if I could maybe put a finer point to that second one, if it's local, then we would work with the judge and say, this is exactly what's occurring in, say, X county, in Fulton County, and this is what we'd like for you, the judicial order, to say in terms of us putting that job app on there. And then typically the judge will go, absolutely, we want them to be able to get a job. At the state level, we would assume we would work with the DOL here, or I'm not sure which entity here in Tennessee, my apologies, but work with them and make sure that they knew, hey, we're putting that app on, here's what we're going to do, and what can we do to vet the employers who are absolutely going to be open to taking individuals with a felony conviction, et cetera. So we want to work with them so then that way we do get that path so they can open up their phone and literally say, hey, I got this job, and the judge knows or the department knows, depending on if we're talking state or local. Does that? Okay, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you all. I know you have to go, so
We can take another question.
Representative Dixie, you're recognized.
So my question to you is that I understand you use the biometrics, but how can you detect like the continual alcohol monitoring, or if someone's on drugs, if they're, or the type of drug they're using? Because like I said, I understand that the biometrics there, they may go up if you assume they're taking meth, but also they could be having a panic attack.
Sure.
So how can you distinguish it, or does your device do that?
Yeah, so my apologies. When I made that reference, that was around our inside the wire, not our outside the wire. We are working on, and will be done easily by the early 22, on a wearable that will take care of that exact issue, may it be drug or may it be alcohol. Right now, our outside the wire product does not make any representations that we can handle or tell you whether or not you're taking meth or whether or not you're having a panic attack, to your point. So we typically see on outside the wire, we don't see a lot of jurisdictions picking up the biometrics because they're not as interested in the biometrics. Inside, though, we expect the biometrics to go across the board. Once we have that wearable, we expect the biometrics and that to come, because one of the things I did not mention, I apologize, is for the video to truly be valid for a judge in a court, we have to confirm it's Todd Jones on the video and not Micah, right? Because the judge has 1,000 different people in front of them. So we use a combination of facial recognition and biometrics to confirm it's Todd and not Micah in front of the judge on the video. So, but again, all that's starting to work together. In 22, we'll have a wearable for outside the wire.
Representative Hardaway, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen. And I understand you're changing the name to Talitrix.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Okay. And I also forgive you. You're from Atlanta?
No, I'm north of Atlanta, sir.
I'm west of Atlanta.
Oh, nobody wants to claim Atlanta.
No. No.
You knew I was going to stick you with the Falcons, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And tell you how I understand you're not wanting to know the name of the Titans, Nissan Stadium.
Nissan.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah. Nissan said no to Georgia and yes to Tennessee. We're still a little upset about that.
Okay. On the quickly, Leader Chairman Dixie covered on the monitoring for drug and alcohol use. I was curious about that. Does local law enforcement or whomever the district law enforcement agencies, do they have access to real-time data, or do they have to contact your center?
So the answer to your question is yes. We have a myriad of different dashboards. As a matter of fact, on their phone they can get it, on their tablet they can get it, on the web they can get it. We have KPIs completely built in, and then all of that is configurable by the individual consuming that information.
And what type of guarantees do you have against being hacked?
So clearly, when you see someone like Equifax get hacked, I can't give you a 100% guarantee, but then again, if anyone told you 100% guarantee, even the DOD can't provide that. But right now, we're providing in paperwork, we're providing an uptime guarantee of 99.9999, and then in terms of cybersecurity, we provide all the indemnification to either the state or the jurisdiction.
All right, I have more, Mr. Chairman, but out of consideration for others, I will forego those. Contact you directly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Good luck catching your flight.
Thank you.
Members, that takes us to Smart Start of Tennessee. We have Brandon.